Boy bands, come on. You liked NSYNC when you were younger. To Hit Me Baby One More Time with Britney Spears. To Michael Jordan. To Sammy Sosa. See out of there. The 90s. It was a decade we were born. It's a decade we love. It was at the height of civilization, in my opinion. And the 90s is my favorite historical era. Can you think of a time, maybe besides the Beatles revolution, but I would challenge the 90s had more of a cultural revolution than any other era. Challenge me to come up with one era that had more influence than the 90s. I don't think anyone in this room can do it. And there's some smart people in this room. There's a lot more culturally informed people than myself. I don't read People magazine. I don't look at that stuff. But you know what? I was a 90s baby. I grew up in the 90s. I loved the 90s and I missed it. Because ever since then, 2000s, 2010s, have you guys been impressed with this decade? But the 90s, you start off so strong with the 90s and then just been going downhill. Can we bring the 90s back? It's something I ask myself every day. Can we bring the 90s back? You look at Bill Clinton. You look at the Chicago Bulls. I mean, back when Donald Trump was Donald Trump and not just a political cartoon, that was the 90s. That was the 90s. 2000s, 2001, civilization went way down with September 11th. Okay? We lost the momentum of the 90s and we couldn't bring it back. You can't bring it back after something like that. The 90s. The 90s was when Wall Street was strong and honest. Well, Wall Street was never really honest, but more honest than today. The 90s. The 90s, the big scientific breakthroughs, the cures for medicine. The 90s, the information age, the internet. Al Gore did not invent the internet, we all know that, but it advanced the most in the 90s. Think of something more powerful. Think of a time that led to more information growth and more technology growth than the 90s. This is the place to ask it. This is the Georgia Institute of Technology. And I don't think anyone can name any answer besides the 90s. The 90s. Can we go back to the 90s?